How are you?
Good. How are you?
Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Interesting time to be putting out a record. I don't have to tell you.
No, it's very interesting. Yeah.
How are you finding it?
Well, I feel really lucky because I feel like a lot of music that's been released that is really worthy of attention, hasn't received enough attention because I think people's minds are a little too full to take in more. So I feel like I've been surprisingly lucky in that people are meeting this music in a very open-hearted way, and that's not something I was expecting, especially without the ability to go play it for people. So I feel very happily surprised.
Can we talk about the change in sound? I mean, I might have made a big deal out of it in the introduction, but I think it might have been a big deal. Tell me a little bit about it.
I mean, I think I realized lately that a lot of my decisions start out as these like strong instincts or strong pulls, and I'm not quite sure why. And then over time, I sort of unravel why I made that decision and why that instinct was there. And I think like in the case of this shift, it just was an organic one. I just was going towards something that felt new and exciting and interesting. But I think the reason behind it was that I think that like pop music and music with like a steady rhythm and music that's more passionate and clear is like the music we turn to express big emotions, like despair and love. We express these things through pop music. And so I think turning to some of those tropes was a way to use some of those genre things in order to express, big feelings of love and despair and passion.
Did it work? Did you find that you were more easily able to express these things?
Well, I mean, I think so. I mean, hopefully, I think what people will bring to it is what will show me whether it worked or not. But
But you,
yes,
as a writer,
for me, it worked. Yeah, as a writer, yeah, I'm really proud of the record, and it feels very deliberate. And I felt like with this record and the last record, I was really stepping into a role of producer and choosing to use all the tools that were at my disposal. And some of these tools on this record included like amazing musicians and a great drummer and a beautiful studio and all these things that I didn't necessarily have back when I was making super quiet guitar records.
you switched from guitar to piano for a lot of your writing in this record. Is that right?
Yeah, for all of it. Yeah.
What does that do?
Well, for me, it brought back the beginner's mind of not fully knowing what I was doing. I played piano when I was a kid, but I hadn't really played it in many years, and I was trying to write songs on guitar and just finding that it just felt a bit stale, and I was making the same decisions I would normally make. And when I picked up a keyboard and just put my hands on the keys, I wasn't thinking about what chord changes I was going towards. And it just gave me this openness and freedom that felt like a beautiful door to walk through to find more songs.
Isn't that interesting, though? I mean, one would think that that openness and freedom comes from mastery. That once you are able to take your mind off of an instrument, then you are able to kind of do anything you want with it. You're not the only person to say it to me. That often taking an instrument you don't know as well, or a medium you don't know as well, you can find more freedom. And it's interesting to me.
Well, I mean, there's that too. And actually, since I made this record, which was quite a while ago, like piano is now the first instrument I've like properly been learning as an adult. And now I feel like I know what I'm doing and I'm able to make choices when I touch a piano. And I actually just never really learned guitar properly. So I never had mastery on guitar because I always played in open tunings and kind of avoided theory and avoided learning the fretboard. So I think both can work. I think when you can achieve that mastery on an instrument, absolutely, that's the deepest freedom. But there is something magical that happens in the subconscious, I think, when you're just following your nose and you're not following your intellect and you're not 100% sure where you're going.
You can also get caught in shapes on guitar, I think.
Yes.
You know,
Shapes, yes.
shapes and patterns, and the piano can be much, you know what I mean? You can feel like you can do more with it.
I mean, the one thing that is beautiful about piano is it's so physically comfortable to play compared to guitar. I mean, you don't need technique to make a beautiful sound with a piano. You can sit, you can be relaxed, you're physically open. It's all laid out in front of you. It's actually a lovely instrument in that way.
Last time you came on the show, it was the live show at the Glenn Gould, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you came on to talk a little bit about some work you'd been doing environmentally, we'll say. We were doing something, I think, alongside The Current about the election, and you came on to talk a little bit about some. I mean, you were doing some concerts and you were doing some kind of consultations, some kind of panels around your concerts, talking to folks in the oil and gas industry and environmental conscious folks. And I guess that was on my mind, Tam, when I was listening to your record, and I wonder whether I'm loath to put anything on you, but I wondered whether that was seeping into my listening to the record, or was there an intentional focus to make a record that perhaps addressed some environmental issues?
I mean, a bit of both. I don't think it was intentional, but absolutely the time when I wrote the record, the basis of the record was having a very emotional experience about climate change. I mean, it was the winter of 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
And I had gotten home from tour, and I was home for the first time in so long. And for some reason, there was a bit of percolation in the societal conscience about climate at that time.
Yeah.
Something kind of grabbed hold of me, and I felt like my whole life, and especially the last, 5-10 years of my adult life, I had been avoiding looking at climate change. It was just this dread, this like awful feeling in the pit of my stomach that sometimes I would feel when I was somewhere beautiful, when I was in nature, which used to be such a source of comfort for me and such a deep connection for me. And I think that comes through in the self-titled, for example, of like, when I'm in nature, there's something wrong. There's something missing. And in the winter of 2018, I just started reading about climate change, and then it became like this weird obsession. And I was like, obsessively reading about climate change and trying to understand the situation, which, as much as, we may think we're aware, actually, like, the modern, political narrative, for example, like, isn't super correct. Like, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of sort of incorrect narratives out there about like how much time we have, what we have to do, and what's possible. So I actually found it was really like worth taking a lot of time to read and really understand, which I did do. And reading a lot about climate change, like, really changed me. Like, it was a sort of strange, like, radicalizing experience, and a very emotional experience, because when you really understand the situation we're in and how little we have done, it's very difficult to function in the world the same way, and to look at the world the same way, and to have faith in, in leaders or in people in power. And it really changed me to really look at it and to really research it. Was a true moment of change. And, I did become a kind of crappy, middle of the road activist, sort of. I, went to a lot of rallies, and I tried to engage politically, with my representatives. But I also was engaging emotionally, and that emotional climate of understanding, the grief and also the betrayal, really dovetailed with like a lot of personal feelings I had, and how I was witnessing, relationships between people around me. And all of those things kind of percolated into these songs that, I didn't think like I was writing climate grief songs, but I was, that was what I was feeling. So I think that the album is not meant to be like political or educational. It's just emotional. And I think that expressing that emotion felt really important to me to do, and was like where my heart led me. And, I think it's wonderful that you hear that. I think I didn't intend that to be the only thing you could hear in the record. I thought many people would hear it as like personal or romantic, but, I thought, why not give these feelings as much heart as people have given, the Eternal Love Song. I mean, it is as profound an emotion.
Well, I want to pick up on something you said there, because you're right, and perhaps that was a mischaracterization on my part, or perhaps just when someone says this is an album that contains themes around the environment, I think there's an assumption that what I mean by that is this is an album where you play guitar and sing Save the Whales over and over and over again. Not that there'd be anything wrong with that, but it is more of a sort of a personal journey, and I can hear you reckoning with things that I personally find it hard to look at and hard to think about too much. I want to play a song from the record. Just take a listen.
I should get all this dying off of my mind. I should really know better than to read the headlines. Doesn't matter if I see, or really can I not just cover my
If you're just tuning in, I'm Tom Power. This is Q. The song you're hearing right now is Atlantic by my guest Tamara Lindeman, a.k.a. The Weather Station. Can we talk about a line in that song? I should get all this dying off my mind. I should really know better than to read the headlines. You knew that was the one I was going to pick, too.
Sure, yeah.
Talk to me a bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I definitely, there's a lot of lines on this album that I feel like a bit of a cringe shame response.
Really?
When I know that they're there. But, that was just a faithful description of a moment of thought, of like wishing that I didn't know. I was really describing, as I say in the song, a moment of great beauty where I was drinking wine. I was a little drunk. I was in a beautiful place. I was watching the sunset, and there were so many shorebirds, flying all around me. And it was like one of the most beautiful places I'd ever been. And I just felt so much this longing for a naivete that I can't have. I wish I didn't know what was going to happen, in the future to shorebirds, to the ocean. It was just that moment of wishing that I didn't know.
Well, yeah. And it was salient to me because I can agree with you on that, or like I can empathize with you on that. And listening to this record made me think about how little even as someone who works in media, I'm not in the news or anything like that. I asked people, what do you mean a lot? But I still don't want to address it, like not even address it. I don't even want to think about it sometimes,
No.
It was nice to hear that articulated, though it did make me wonder why I don't want to even think about it,
Well, I think that something I think a lot about when I look at the world around us and our society and our generation is, I think that this weight is not something that humans are made to carry. I mean, no human generation in history has ever faced this, obviously. And of course we can't carry it all the time. Of course we have to look away. Of course we need respite. But I do think too that our inability to look at it, I think, is behind, it's my personal opinion, but I believe that our inability to look at our climate fears and our climate grief is behind so much of, the conspiracy theories and climate denial and, all of this darkness in our society, I think is related.
How do you balance then artistry and activism?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really think I'm a very good activist.
No.
I'd like to be better. I'd like to do more, but I don't know how to balance it. I just think that, I've enjoyed using the moments where I happen to be speaking to the media in any form, to talk about this. And because that's something I want to model, talking about it with curiosity and with vulnerability. And so that to me is a very small action, that I can take. But yeah, the artistry is something different. I mean, I think the artistry isn't politics. It's just emotion. It's just how you feel and what you see.
Do you hear from people, like listeners to the music and fans of your music? Do they talk to you about what they're feeling? I guess in the same way that I did. Do they talk to you about what they're feeling environmentally with these songs? Because I can imagine that might be a bit overwhelming for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, people really do. It's interesting. I think it's something I'm very proud of with my music. It's maybe the thing I'm most proud of is when people it's something that used to happen at the merch table, or when I met people out in the crowd, that people find that they can feel through my music, and they have an emotional experience, or it validates them in some way. And that, I feel, is, if I can have done that for anyone, I've done something good. Um, but yeah, it's interesting so far. I mean, people feel this permission to talk about how they feel about these things to me. And I think for some people, they say, like, I've never talked about this to anyone, and so that feels really important to me, and like a purpose worth having.
We've had a lot of bands come on the show to talk a little bit about how they've been trying to make touring more environmentally stable. I want to acknowledge what you said earlier, is that it is improperly placed on individuals, and it's very challenging for it to be placed on individuals. But that being said, have you given thought to what it might mean to tour again when this is all over?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I've definitely enjoyed the ability that I have right now to essentially tour and promote my record from my home. It feels like a beautiful luxury, and actually really great. And I hope that in the future we take it seriously, of like, recorded music can be enough, and a conversation can be enough. But yeah, it's a difficult circle to square, because, on the one hand, I hope and long for a world in which travel, which is a beautiful, beautiful gift, for the soul and for understanding humanity. I love to travel. I love to be out in the world. I love driving, I love all of these things. And I really hope that we can fight for a world where driving, and traveling doesn't have to have the enormous carbon footprint that it has now, and there are possibilities for that. And in that too is the hope that, there's nothing inherently climate bad about playing music for people. It's just the fact that, airplanes run on avgas. That's the problem. But I hope that with the shift that could come, it wouldn't have to have this huge impact. And then there's the prosaic things that, like, I've tried to do, of like talking to my team and being like, okay, like, we're not going to tour as heavily as we used to, and we're going to be a lot more quality over quantity, and we're going to not fly so much, and be more thoughtful about what we do and why. But none of that, is really all that impactful. It's just, a little chip off the bigger problem.
It's nice to hear you say, with the shift that's coming, do you have moments of hope? What's your relationship with hope when it comes to this?
Well, I have moments of like pragmatic hope based on like what has changed in the last 2 years. I mean, when I first was researching this on my own strange journey, there wasn't a lot of good news on the climate beat. I mean, it was pretty dark. I mean, and now there is a few little glimmers, with the new administration in the US, and a lot of the way that, renewable energy is so cheap. There's all of these little glimmers of hope that it might not be as bad. There's a possibility for a change, but it's like it's still extremely dire. So I wouldn't say that I'm hopeful at all, really. But I've never not been like an optimistic person in general. So I don't think I feel hope, but I do feel something more pragmatic of, I see other people fighting, and that makes me feel better. And the number of people fighting is growing and growing. And there are real fighters for climate who are attaining like positions of power in the US government, for example, which is like a huge change. So there's a few little shifts, but I would be amiss to say that things are hopeful.
And certainly, I don't want to give the impression that this is a cynical record at all, but there is something cathartic for me about hearing you sort of stare into the eye for me, in a way that I haven't been able to,
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a role that I've always needed to play in what I write. And also it's a role for the artist to play. I mean, I think that most people struggle to face their darkest emotions, and music can be cathartic and can be a companion in that. And that's something that's really powerful. And I'm glad that my music could be that for you, even in a small way. That makes me feel as though I've done what I needed to do.
How would you pick a track off the record? Something that's maybe meaningful to you?
Maybe, I mean, they're all meaningful to me. Maybe Loss.
Why? Or at least tell me about it.
I don't know. I mean, I thought about it the other day. I, it's a very simple, small song. Once again, a lot of the songs are just about a little small moment, and that has a big meaning. And I think it's about a moment where someone's waking up to a difficult reality, and like this song kind of started in that loss is loss is loss repetition. And of course I was like, well, that's heavy. Maybe I shouldn't write a song about this. But I think that what was bothering me and what forced me to put the song on the
Was this a
album
real something that happened to you? Was this a real
moment?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's addressed to a you who maybe is probably me. But yeah, I mean, this moment of like when you realize that loss is lost, and that when something is lost, it's gone, is actually like a realization of how much things matter, and when you realize how much things matter, it's a very different relationship to reality, and I think the line that I like the most in that song is where I quote a friend of mine who said, at some point you have to live as if the truth was true. And I found that so big, and it was kind of fun to slide it into a song.
Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you.